Доброго дня, шановні колеги. Цифровізація надалі проникає практично у всі сфери життя людини, функціонування суспільства, людства загалом.
Good afternoon, colleagues. Digitalization will continue to penetrate almost all spheres of human life, the function of society, humanity in general.
Наукові розвідки, що здійснює Інститут економіко-правових досліджень імені Мамутова Національної академії наук України, дозволили нам познайомитись із здобутками відомого вченого із Шотландії Василіуса Манусаса, професора, експерта-свідка, менеджера-консультанта з цифрової криміналістики та кіберзлочинності, керівника кіберакадемії з міста Единбурга.
Scientific research carried out by Institute of Economic and Legal Research, named V.Mamutov of the National Academy of Science of Ukraine, allowed us to get acquainted with the achievement of the statistics from Scotland. Basil Manusas, professor, expert, and manager consultant in digital forensic and cybercrime, head of the Cyber Academy from Edinburgh.
Шановний пан професор люб'язно відгукнувся на пропозицію поділитися власним досвідом роботи з цифровими доказами.
Mr. Manusas agreed to show to us her experience in work with digital evidence in her works.
Я впевнений, що наш захід буде корисний і студентам, і аспірантам, і досвідченим науковцям, а також практикам.
I'm sure that our event will be useful to students, experienced scientists, and practice.
І зараз хочу з задоволенням надати слово шановному пану Василісу.
Welcome, Vasilis, for your speech and presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me. And Director, thank you very much for your kind words and for your warm welcome. It's a pleasure to be here. I met Alexander a few months ago. I had contacted the Bar Association and asked if I could be of help. And they put me in touch with Alexander, and we already started becoming friends. And hopefully we'll be organizing more of these events in the near future, both with Mamutov Institute and other bodies, especially the National Bar Association of Ukraine. I'll just give me a second. I'll just put my presentation on.
Там треба право доступу дати Бейзілу. Олександре, будь ласка.
Олександр каже, що є.
Надані права доступу, будь ласка.
Дякую дуже. Basil, you have right to show us your presentation.
Can you see my slides now?
Yes, all is okay.
Good. So that's it. So a bit about myself. I am the manager of the Cyber Academy at Edinburgh Napier University in Scotland. We are one of the newer universities, but very, very strong in cybersecurity. But I'm also an expert witness in digital forensics and cybercrime, and running my own business, Trustcloud Forensics. And today my experience is coming from my second job, my work as an expert witness. I'm working very closely with lawyers, with the Law Society of Scotland, generally with the legal profession. And in criminal cases, I'm on the opposite side of the prosecutors and the police, working for the defense. I'm a visiting lecturer at Sheffield Hallam University, before that at the Faculty of Law at the Catholic University of Lyon, and a visiting lecturer at West Lothian College, a college nearby Edinburgh. I'm also working closely with Interpol on a project called Project Leader that creates capacity on digital forensics for 8 Southeast Asian countries. And I'm also a member of the roster of experts at the International Telecommunications Union. As I said, I work very closely with the Law Society of Scotland, and that is our main connection, initial connection with Alexander. And I'm a member of the 3 committees and subcommittees. So enough about me. Let's start talking about digital evidence. So we'll start. This presentation is going to be. This presentation is not going to be about technical stuff. It's going to be about you understanding how digital evidence appears in different forms and in different cases. Most people think of digital evidence for criminal cases, but it's not just the criminal cases. It is literally everywhere. Employment cases, family courts, private disputes, civil litigation, everything you can imagine, digital evidence is there. As the director said before, everything is digitalized and it affects every part of our lives, and it will be even worse as we go along. You've heard of metaverse and how this is supposed to shape the internet, and I can tell you that Interpol officially has set up a metaverse working group and is setting up metaverse police stations and Interpol stations in advance. So the fear of the crime and the abuse there is going to be quite big. So how do we investigate evidence, especially in this case now in the criminal cases? How do we source it? Where do we get our evidence from? Do we always need to have new evidence to disprove something? Or is it the evidence used for charging someone enough to disprove that the prosecutors are wrong? And does the police, and especially the prosecutors, understand digital evidence? These are some of the important questions that we try to answer through these cases I have selected. So the thing about criminal cases, it's about real people. It affects people's lives. And when the police and the prosecutors get it wrong, people can suffer. And when the defense lawyers get it wrong, then they cannot help their clients. I do not have the statistics from Ukraine, but in England, only 5% of all criminal cases that are charged end up in court. The other 95% are either dropped or people plead guilty to get a minimum sentence. So the actual courts amount only for 5% of all the charges every year. This is just a small, the first one is a small extract from many cases that I see this kind of behavior. So you have the police report that says the person has Google searched the word child pornography, and they found a URL, an address on the drive that points to this file. It's a video file, an AVI video file, and the name is called 12-year-old kiddie, child. And then the report says that the file was unrecoverable. We could not recover it because the data were corrupted. So we know that the file is there. We know the name of the file, but we cannot see what's inside. Okay. So look at that. Which of those 3 things are actually evidence? The Google search, the file name, or the statement of the police? Which of these do you think you can use to charge this person? Feel free to talk. I didn't say, please just ask questions or just answer straight away. Oh, someone is on the chat. Andrei said nothing. Anyone else? Andrei was actually correct. That was the correct answer. If you search for the word child pornography, it's not a crime. The crime is downloading and watching it. To search for that is not a crime. It is a crime. It is part of the crime when you have actually downloaded it and they actually find the material in your computer. Because you can look for that for any reason. You are a parent and you want to see what, read articles about that, then how to protect your child. You can be a reporter, a researcher, an academic, a student in criminology or in nursing writing the thesis. And if you read an article about child pornography, it's not a crime. You go on the Times or the BBC or any newspaper or any other website and you read articles. None of that is. So when you find the word child pornography or words like that on a computer and you find it a word 100 times, you need to go through all the 100 times and see what is the context. So searching for that by itself is not a crime. This one is an indication of a crime. It obviously looks like it's a video that, you know, it is about a child. However, you cannot put someone in prison because of a file name. You don't know what is in there. Okay. Just because someone smokes like they smoked cannabis or someone around them smoked cannabis doesn't make them drug dealers. It's as simple as that. So usually the prosecutors do not understand this difference and they charge people, and people like myself come to the court for the defense and tell the judge that they are wrong. And usually the judge listens to reason. The next is a more complicated case. There's a woman who goes to the police station and complains that another gentleman, Mr. B, had sent her some threatening messages. The context was that the woman was dating Mr. B's best friend. She broke up with him. Mr. B's friend was depressed, he was sad, and apparently he sent her a message that was threatening. And then she goes to the police 1.5 years later. Now, normal people, if they get a threatening message, they would go to the police straight away, not 1.5 years later. So the police gets a copy of the message, do not examine the man's mobile phone, and they pass the information to the prosecutor, and the prosecutors are charging him. The problem is that they didn't check his mobile phone. I checked his mobile phone later and there was nothing there, but there were no records. Mobile phone operators keep their records for, on average, 12 months. 1.5 years later, there is no record. And the only way to prove that that message came from that man's mobile phone was to have those records. So as the lawyers called me, they asked me if they can, the messages can be spoofed, if someone can send a fake message, or if they can create a fake message that looks like it came 1.5 years ago. And I did that. I went to a website called Sharpmail, and I used the lady's number, which was on the report, to send a message to myself. And I put this text message saying that it is a proof of concept, it's not a real message. And I took this, back then, you know, it was many years ago, we didn't have screenshots on your iPhone like you have now. So I had to take a picture of my BlackBerry screen and I put it on a report. And the report was not even a forensic report. Okay, it was not a forensic report. It was an academic paper, it was a proof of concept. explaining how it can be done. I didn't say that the lady did that. I said that it can be done. And that is something that the prosecutors did not even think about it, and they did not ask the police experts for advice. This is a screenshot from the laptop, from my computer when I send the message. And the case was dropped. The prosecutors dropped the case because they had nothing, they could not prove anything. And the biggest mistake was they did not ask the police for advice. And that is a very common thing in our legal systems. Very, very common thing. As I said, I'm working with Interpol with 8 Southeast Asian countries. I'm going to Vietnam and Hong Kong in the end of May. And we'll have mock trials where prosecutors are going to present digital evidence for a case that we're working on. And so far in all the mock trials is the same thing as what I saw in Scotland. The prosecutors do not ask help from the police. And they're on the same side. In Scotland, the prosecutors are the police's bosses. The police have to report to the prosecutors. Most countries is like that. The next case is a case about a woman who reports to the police that her ex-husband was standing outside her home for an hour. Now, that woman had a restraining order against the husband, the ex-husband. The ex-husband was a violent man. He was a former policeman. He went to prison for beating her. He lost his job at the police. So he came out of the prison. He started again, and then his ex-wife called the police and said, "I saw him. He was there for an hour." And what happened is that because of his past, they charged that man with breaking the restraining order, virtually with no evidence. So there was no CCTV cameras or camera footage from any cars or any witnesses. There was nothing to prove that he was actually there. And of course, he was not a good person. He was a very bad person. But you cannot put someone in prison for something they did not do. They should go to prison only for something that they did. So his lawyers contacted me, and we looked at his whereabouts through his mobile phone to prove where he was by using his mobile phone. Now, the evidence about the mobile phone tells you where the mobile phone is, not where the person is. You need to have something that will corroborate that, corroborating evidence. And corroborating evidence will be someone who talks on the phone with you. Okay, so Alexander now says he's at home. Okay, but the police arrest him because he did something else on the other side of Kyiv. And says, "Oh no, I was at home." Well, your mobile phone, Alexander, was at home, but were you at home? And then says, "Oh yes, because if my phone was there, I was on the phone with Basil, and we were talking with Basil for an hour when that crime took place." So if Basil say he's my witness that I was on the phone with him, and the record shows that I had called Basil, then I must have been where my mobile phone was. But even if you don't have that, you create reasonable doubt. The everyday person, every one of you, you are all where your mobile phone is. So when you create that, you present that evidence, it's for the prosecutor to find additional evidence. And if they cannot, then you have a reasonable doubt. There is a very good possibility that you are innocent because there is more evidence of that than the prosecutor has. So I look at the cell site data, which is the information by the provider, and they would tell me when a text message was sent or received, or when a call started or ended, where the mobile phone was. I also asked for the easterns and northerns. These are some technical issues, but just for you to understand, most of the system of the mobile phones is like 3 antennas, the one around the other. So they create a circle, and each one covers 1/3 of the circle, 120 degrees. So of those 120 degrees, the middle, okay, so if one of the 3 pieces starts from north 0 to 120, the middle is 60. So the middle tells you that part of the antenna, which way is looking, the direction of the antenna. So those numbers mean these things to me, and I know how to put them on a map. And this is how I did. In the green areas, as you can see here, I have the areas, which is the direction of the signal from the 3 antennas that I got during from the record. As you see here, there's 3 numbers through the time that he was supposed to be outside his ex-wife's home.
Sure.
Hello, sorry, someone want to ask something? Sorry. So it was only 3 different antennas. So the one on the south was pointing like this, the one on the north was pointing like this, and this one was pointing to the left. So as you can see, I know which area the antennas were looking. All 3 antennas had an area that all of them covered. And that area was a triangle. In the middle of the triangle, okay, it was the house of the accused, where his mobile phone was supposed to be. And the behavior made sense, because if you are in your flat, in your apartment, you go on the one side, you get a better signal from one antenna. You go to the kitchen on the other side, you get a better signal from another antenna. And the ex-wife's place was somewhere by the sea here, between the blue and the red marker. So as you can see, the behavior of the mobile phone made sense that it was actually literally at home in the middle of this triangle. So I look at that information, I try to analyze, I try to see how long it would take for him to go from his home to that place and back. It didn't make any sense either walking or driving, because the gaps between text and messages on the record did not allow enough time for him to go there, stand there, and come back. So the case was actually dropped by the court because there was a very large degree of reasonable doubt. And this is the thing, in most cases, in criminal cases, you don't need to prove that you are innocent. What you need is to create enough reasonable doubt for the judge or the jury to say, well, there is not enough evidence to convict you. Any questions so far? We'll have a time in the end, but if you have any questions, please, at the end of every case, just ask. Anybody? See, I've got a message here. It was another one from Alexander. Anyone else? So, okay, I'll go to the next one. So the next one is the first criminal cases that I worked. At the beginning of my career, I worked many civil and employment case. And then I finally had my first one where the police was holding the evidence. And that was in the Dumfries and Galloway constabulary in the south part of Scotland. And that was part of a drug case. And the lawyer asked me to look at the device, although we do not expect there will be anything serious in terms of the messages, but the lawyer just wanted to do his due diligence. And this was the mobile phone, that was the evidence. As you see, the mobile phone and the battery were in different evidence bags. This is because the guys that were the drug dealers, they were running on the motorway, the police was chasing them with their cars, police cars, it was like in the movies, and the guys was taking out the SIM card and the batteries, and then throwing the batteries and the bags of cannabis on the motorway, trying to destroy the evidence. So because the mobile phone and the battery were found at a different place, they had to bag them differently. So on the way to examine the mobile phone, I had a problem. I had my tool, my laptop, and the tool I tried on my own Nokia mobile phone. It was working. And like Murphy's Law, the morning that I went to examine the real evidence, it wasn't working. So when I went to the police station, I said, by the way, I will, instead of me examining with my tool, I want you to examine again with your own tool. I'll just observe. You give me the CD with the evidence, and if the two CDs, the original and the new one, are the same, that's case closed. I don't have anything to report. But what happened is that they could not get the results they had before. And they tried again, and they changed their settings on the tool. And finally, I got a CD that had different data. So if you look here in the first column, 8th of May 2009, that's when the police examined the mobile phone. The second one was the 12th of January, was when I was there. So if you look at this, they could not recover the dial calls, they could not recover the answer calls, and they could not recover the missed calls. And even worse, they actually recovered more text messages. And that is a problem. If there were at least 4 cases where the police evidence was compromised, there could probably be a 5th one that I couldn't see. So that was it. I just wrote that on my report and handed it to the lawyer. What happened is that the tool had a glitch, had a problem, and it was not patched properly, it was not fixed properly. And there was also something else, that the Nokia device had a default setting where any call records older than 30 days will be wiped. This is because back then in 2009, mobile phones did not have all the storage that we have now. And as a result, you only had a limited amount of storage to save your messages and to save your phone book. And that meant that the moment the police switched on the device to examine the second time, they just destroyed the evidence themselves. And the other problem was the process. The device was examined by 2 investigators initially, one police officer and one civilian. But they did not examine them with different tools. They used the same tool, the one called CellDeck. Since CellDeck had a technical problem, a technical glitch, both of them, they would follow the same process. They could just repeat the same errors, and the results would be the same because they had the same errors. Does anyone know who this is? Nobody watches CSI in Kyiv? CSI is a police forensic crime drama, sorry. And the main character was this guy, Gil Crison. And he was more of a scientist than a police officer. And he would always run experiments to see if his theory was correct. And this is what Gil would have done. He would have used 2 different tools. And if the results were the same, that'll be fine. If the results were not the same, he wouldn't know which tool was right and which tool was wrong. Then he would get a 3rd tool and see which 2 agree with each other. And that's the proper scientific method. The next one is a case of the police against a policeman. A policeman was charged for a breach of peace and assault. And what happened is that he was living with his girlfriend and his 2 sons from a previous relationship. They broke up and he moved back with his father, gave her a month to find her own home and move out. She did not. And the day before the eviction, because he had gone to his lawyers, the day before the eviction, he was calling her, asking her to just leave. And that woman actually called the police and said that he was outside the door, banging the door, and she was scared. So they arrested him that same night. Then they did not charge him for at least 2 months. And when he asked to get the video records from the street where he had parked his car, they said, oh, it was deleted. And then his lawyers looked at cell site information as an option. They called me. And I look at the records at the time of the alleged offense, the time that, the lady said that he was banging on the door. And I look at the information about the location of the mobile phone. So the evidence from a mobile phone operator, I don't know what is the legal status in Ukraine, but it's considered unadulterated evidence. So when you get a record like that from your mobile phone operator, both the prosecution and the defense accept that this is real. So when the defense produces it, the court or the police are not going to say, oh, it's not real, because it's coming with a signature, sworn signature and a sworn statement from the operator. And this is the original record. This is how a record of a mobile phone looks like. It has the date. It tells you what kind of a call it is. It tells you mobile originating. Originating means that this is a call that was started from your mobile. And this is a SMS message sent by your mobile phone. And if you see, all his calls are just a few seconds until he's calling, until the answer machine comes up, and then he hangs up. And these that show 0 duration, 0 seconds, these are the text messages. It tells you where the phone call started and where it went to. It also tells you the postcode. And in the UK, everything has a postcode, and postcodes are very small. So we have many postcodes, combinations of letters and numbers. So in a city, a postcode could be 3 or 4 buildings, or 10 buildings. It depends on the density of the city. So it's a very precise thing, the postcode. In the sat-nav, I don't put anybody's address when I go to, I just put the postcode. And it's and of course, a mobile phone antenna will be somewhere, and that somewhere has a postcode. So the antenna has its own postcode. So you see, there are 2 records here: the CI, which is the cell identity, and the last CI. And for a text message, there is only 1, but for a call, there is 2. These happen to be the same because he was in the same area. But if he was driving while making a long call, these 2 numbers would be different, because it would start on one place and finish somewhere else. And both the antennas, as you see, have the postcode. And this is a map of the area provided by the operator. And this is the best server map, as it's called, and it shows you see these white lines over here. They show you what is the guaranteed signal area. So my client was somewhere here on this strip of by the sea. The problem was that although the house that was somewhere here was not proven to be anywhere near, the signal was not coming from near where he said he was. Interestingly, there was a big antenna here, but there was a big port building that was blocking the signal, and the signal was coming from the opposite side. So he was here, and instead of getting a signal from a couple 200 meters away from that antenna, he would get a signal from here, 2 or 3 miles on the other side of the water, because this area on the River Clyde was unobstructed. So the evidence was showing that he was not there, but they would not prove his alibi. So I tried to see, to have a control experiment. So this is his apartment. This is the entrance, the corridor. And I start going inside and outside his apartment, making calls to his mobile phone, receiving calls on his mobile phone, going around the building. So every call and record, I knew exactly where the mobile phone was. And then I took the records again from the operator, T-Mobile, to see which antennas would be recorded if I was here, because apparently he was outside the door, the flat door, and he was banging the door. So I want to see what a control experiment would prove. And on the first side, you will see this is the list of all the antennas from both records. This is the ones that actually showed up during the time of the alleged offense. And this is my control experiment. And if you see, in the control experiment, the majority of the records came from one single tower, 91%, almost 92%, which was only 5% the night of the alleged offense. And I put them on a graph on Excel, nothing complicated. And as you can see, the blue are the original records and the yellow are the control experiment. And there is no connection at all. There is no pattern there. There is nothing. So that means that the mobile phone was not there. Actually, the probability that it was not there was more than 91%. I could not prove exactly the location where it was, but it was easier for me to prove where it wasn't. And the probability that it was not at the locus, not in front of that apartment, was more than 90%. And that's more than enough to create reasonable doubt. Any questions on this one? This was a more complicated one. Anybody has any questions? Nope. Okay, hopefully there'll be more at the end. The next one is about a more, not more, but a different kind of serious crime. A man was accused of having 2 indecent images of children, 2 pieces of child pornography in his Google Photo app. And that's a serious crime. You not only can go to jail if you have many pictures, but you certainly can go to the sex offenders register. So the police, he was a truck driver. The police had a warrant. They went to his truck. They seized in his home. They seized from his truck 7 items, but the report only discussed 2 of them, the mobile phone and 1 SD card, 1 data card. And the other 5 items were actually missing. They were not anywhere on the report. So the defense solicitor noticed that. He asked me about that. I said, there is nothing in the report. And usually, not usually, normally, if they had 7 items and only 2 of them were relevant, they would list the other 5 and say these are all relevant or they are not working or whatever. So that's why they are not on the report. The thing is that they were never mentioned. And then the defense lawyer called the officer who seized those items when they executed the arrest warrant. Is this your signature? Yes. Did you bag this? Yes. Where is it? I don't know. 5 times, I don't know. And the only person who actually could say something for sure is the police forensic person who said, if it is not in my notes, it never came to my desk. If it had come to my desk, it would be in my notes together with the other things. And that was a very interesting discovery and a very interesting development in the case. So what happened is that I had removed that slide here, actually. It was from a police document. So what happened is that I was assigned to work for that case. The judge in the first diet, as we call it, the first day that both sides come to court to discuss the case and see when they're ready to go to trial. So the judge asked me, what do I need? I said, I need a copy of the police report and I need to see the evidence. So the prosecutor told me, come to my place, to my office after we finish here and I'll give you the report. And I called the police to go and see the evidence, and the police said, you need to bring your dongle from a tool called Celebrite. And dongles are like USB sticks that you cannot write on them. They're read-only devices, and they keep inside the activation key, the product key of the software. And you can have many copies of your software on all your computers, but you can only use the one that you have a dongle. So that's how manufacturers control the licenses. So I said to the police, I don't have a dongle for that tool because I'm not using that tool. Can I use my tool, or can you just, it's only 2 pictures. All I want is the metadata, the dates and times of those 2 files. Can you just send them to me? And they sent an email saying that, oh, it's not our job to get evidence for to give data sets to the defense. So I went back to the court the next time, and when the judge asked me, I said, my lord, the evidence is vendor dependent. And the judge asked me what I meant. I explained to him. He was not happy at all, and he turned to me and he said, do you still want to see the evidence? And of course, you know, a judge can always tell the police what to do, and the police have to do it. So I said, no, not anymore. I'll go without the evidence. We'll go through the trial without seeing the evidence, and we are going to just discredit the police work. And I did exactly that. At the end, the judge actually said that the police report was below the standards expected by the court, and that the prosecutors did not make a single point from their charges. What happened with that report is that it was very, very bad. First of all, they could not tell where the other 5 items that they seized were. That was bad from the beginning. Then it was the 2 pictures had a creation date, but those pictures were not on the mobile phone itself. They were in the Google Photo app, which means that they could have been uploaded in the app from the mobile phone or from any other computer in the world that person or someone with his login would have logged in. And that person was a truck driver. He was driving around the country, and he was using public computers in, how do you call it, in internet cafe everywhere. So he was not logging out. He would leave things logged in, and he would just close the browser and go. And that would be it. So we don't know. So I'd ask the lawyer, when they talk to the police officer in the court, ask them if they have any logs, if they have any records, where and when those pictures were uploaded. When was the last time that the app was actually used? Because the guy said, I haven't used this app for 5 years because I kept losing pictures, probably because he was not logging in anywhere else, and people for fun would delete his pictures. And I'm putting all my pictures on Dropbox. So he asked the police, and the police did not know. and they said that it was not important. They didn't see why it was relevant, how the picture was uploaded. And then the police officer said that they manually browsed the images. And when the lawyer asked him, do you think that browsing and clicking on the images would change the metadata, which means the date and time that were last accessed? They hadn't thought about it. So what I did is I created a proof of concept to see what the creation date was. I look at the creation dates. Sorry, I look at the creation dates, uploading them, and it turned out that the creation date on the file, on the picture, was not the same as the day it was uploaded. So if I upload today on Google Photos a picture that I took last Christmas, and the date on the picture is last Christmas, it will go in the gallery in last Christmas. It will not be the last one in the gallery. Like when in your mobile phone, when you take pictures, the last picture will be the most recent one. With the Google Photo apps, where a picture has already been taken, it just goes to the right date and time. It's just filed properly. So we had no idea how long that picture was there, where it came from, if it came from another computer, and the possibility that the card was not contaminated by other evidence in the lab was less than 18%. And that is because the police could not account for 5 out of the 7 items that they seized. So not to get into more technical things, but it was a big failure. And the biggest failure, the part of the failure was from the police, but the other part was from the prosecutors. The prosecutors could not understand what they were reading because they were lawyers and not technical people. The police were writing technical reports and they thought that everyone else would understand them. Nobody asked for clarifications from the police, but the biggest mistake for me is that the prosecutors take the police report face value. Okay, so if the police says that, that's it. They don't get a second opinion. If you go to a doctor and your doctor says you need to have operation because you got cancer, you're going to go for a second opinion before you go and have the operation. Why you don't ask a second opinion when you are talking about somebody else's life? When you are taking someone and destroy their reputation and you want to put them into prison. This is a big failure. We said that, so the next one is an employment tribunal case, and it was a funny one. The NHS, the National Health Service, where this nurse was working, they fired her. They fired her because in her computer account, they found cookies from a website called Bibo. Bibo is like Facebook. It was kind of big when it started, but it never became Facebook. You know? Young people have not even heard about this. So it still exists, I think. But according to the NHS, Bibo was blocked because they had a program called WebSense that is blocking people from going to watch porn or gamble or things like that. And apparently they had blocked Bibo. And the only evidence they had were some cookies with the word Bibo on it. Everyone knows what cookies are? Anyone? So cookies is when you go on a website, the website is leaving some small text files on your computer. And now because of EU GDPR, whenever you go to a website, you get this, for the first time, you get this message says, we use cookies, click here to accept. I've got a question about the previous case, so I'll get to that. So what was I saying? Yes. So you got the cookies, and but to understand what the cookies mean, you need to open the files and see the content, not just the name, as we saw before. So the IT people just printed a list of cookies on a piece of paper, gave it to human resources fired the nurse. And they said, because they found the cookies, either she used a proxy server is the equivalent of the VPNs we use now. It's a website that you go to that website and then you type the website that you want to visit. So there's no evidence on your computer what you visited. Or she installed illegal software to bypass security. Very serious accusations with no evidence whatsoever, but that's what the HR assumed. And then I look at the NHS policy, the computer IT policy of the health service. And it said back then, it was 2003 or 4, I think, it's okay to install software as long as you check them for viruses. It was crazy. Okay, it was really crazy. We don't do those things now. But even then, we shouldn't be doing those things. How on earth would you allow a nurse to install software on a hospital's computer? Why? You don't allow a lawyer to go into an operating room and tell them how to do their job. It's a very black and white thing. So the NHS did not preserve the cookies, did not get a digital copy of the cookies, nothing. And the NHS lawyers did not even know at the time that NHS had their own computer forensics department. So what I did is I did some experiments. So I visited different websites that are called Bibo, like Bibo.com, that was the suspect website, Bibo.co, Bibo.at. And if you look at the file names that the browser created, they were all the same. Vasilis, that's my username on the computer, at Bibo, __.txt. So if you forget everything else and you just look at the file names, Bibo 1, Bibo 2, Bibo 3, you don't know which Bibo belongs to which website. So when they showed they listed those things, they didn't know. It was just a list of file names. And then I used a proxy server, I think this was a Canadian one, to access Bibo. And what happens is that the proxy server leaves a cookie on my computer, but no other cookie of the things that I actually visited. That's the whole point of the proxy server. So I installed WebSense, that software. I examined for myself. It was working perfectly. There was no problem. So if WebSense was properly set up and was properly blocked Bibo, you would never get a cookie because the nurse would never be landing on Bibo's page. It will be blocked and will say you cannot go there. If you did not go to the page, you don't get a cookie. Okay, you only get a cookie if you actually go there. And then if WebSense was working, the nurse would not have been there. And then they accused her that she actually must have used a proxy server. If she had used a proxy server, there would be no cookies there. So the evidence that they used to fire her was the evidence that I used to prove that they were wrong, that she didn't do it. The thing about the cookies is a black and white. You either went there and there is a cookie, or you didn't go there. And if you went there, then you did not use a proxy server, and WebSense had not blocked it. See how easy it is for someone from human resources or any other department to just misinterpret things. And also the IT people misinterpret things because they were not trained in cybersecurity or forensics or digital evidence. They might have been good at other things that they were doing, but not at that. So there was no need for me to actually look for any new evidence. Even if she had installed some software, which she hadn't, and there was no evidence of that, apparently it wasn't illegal at the time. Because the IT policy for the health service was 7-8 years old and they hadn't renewed it. It was that bad. So the tribunal found in favor of the nurse, and she was compensated for all the salaries she did not receive and got her job back. Let me see, sorry, bear with me. Okay, we still have time. Good. Before we start the next one, I had a couple of questions here. So Vladislav had asked, the question concerns the provision of data on the owner of a mobile phone, of a mobile number, to law enforcement agencies or to courts by mobile operators. Do you have such a procedure in your country? Is this procedure regulated by special law? Yes. The mobile phone operators cannot disclose information about my number to anyone. If my lawyer wants a copy, either I have to make the application or the lawyer must have a power of attorney. The only people who can get that is the police. Some other agencies can get them as well. Things like the city council or the fire brigade and the tax office, but all of them, including the police, they need to go to a court. They need to go in front of a judge, explain what they want, and the judge will will say yes or no. If they say yes, that yes will have restrictions. For example, if there is an issue between me and Alexander, and then the judge will say, I allow the police to ask for a copy of all the calls and messages between Basil and Alexander, but nobody else. You cannot see a single call or text that Basil has sent or received to anybody else. And if it's about the case before where I needed the records of the towers, then the judge will say, look at because Alexander has done something naughty while he's in Kyiv, and the police are investigating him. Sorry, Alexander, that's the truth. So everybody will see you like a criminal now. So then they would say, yes, look at Basil's or Alexander's records between them for Wednesday, the 17th of May, between 1 o'clock and 2:30. Because only the calls and texts between 1 o'clock and 2:30 are relevant, because you want to find out where Basil and where Alexander were while they were talking and texting. Everything else is irrelevant. So the police cannot see anything else. And the operators, they provide the record together with a sworn statement, which is like an affidavit. And that sworn statement, that statement is called a witness statement, and it's the same thing as an affidavit. It's a legally binding document for the operator. So the person who does that is called a police liaison or a court liaison. And their job is just to provide records on the request of the owner or on the request of the authorities. If it's my records and I want for my records, they say, oh, you have to pay that much, pay that, and we'll send you that record. But if it's anything else that goes through lawyers or the courts, it has to be properly scrutinized, and it's very strict. So yes, there are some authorities outside the police that can ask for your records, but they have to be very, very specific, and they have to go to a court and they have to convince the judge that getting those records are important for a more serious offense, a more serious crime than Basil's privacy. Vladislav, does that answer your question? Vladislav here?
As I understand, it's a good answer
Okay.
for the question. Yeah.
So there's one more. Whether you have to use special programs for research or whether they are licensed by the prosecutor or the state. No, the tools are not licensed by the state. anyone can buy forensic tools in the UK, in the United States as well, everywhere in the European Union. There are some manufacturers who create some tools that are for law enforcement only. And it's their choice that they sell only to law enforcement. So if I go there, they'll say, I'm sorry, Basil, it doesn't matter if you're going to pay, how much you want to pay. You can never get that. In the UK, only a police force can get it. But that is a regulation. That's not a regulation from the government. It's a decision from and it's a selling point for the police that we're going to give you a more special version of the tool that nobody else has. But there's a lot of things that tools that you can buy. Some of them are really, really expensive. Like Celebrite for mobile phones can cost around 15,000 a year to maintain a license. Other ones you can just buy for 3,000, 2,000 pounds. And some you can only buy a license only for one investigation, for one phone. So you buy one license, you have the software on your computer, and you can use it as many times as you want on a single mobile phone, because it registers the phone's IMEI number with the company. So you cannot use anything else. But if you want to use a second one, you pay another £100, you buy a second license, and you use a second phone as well. So yes, they are not for the prosecutors or the police only. So let's go to the next one, which is another employment case. And that was a very private one. It was a business. And the business owner, who's also the manager and director, she goes back, comes back from holidays. She goes to Microsoft Word and she looks at the recently opened files. And there were some files that were not supposed to be opened. Her desktop was not locked. It was available for the office manager and the other employees to be there because they would need to access, or she had a very big printer that was not on a network, so people could use that. But in good faith that they were not doing anything improper. So what happened is that she saw that some confidential files were opened. She asked me to investigate the activity on her desktop. So I look at the browsing history, and the browsing history is where you see where you go online, also includes what you do offline, what you do on your computer. So it tells you which folders you visit, tells you which photos or Word documents or Excel documents or presentations you opened. All those things can stay on a record. And I also look at the temporary files on the browsing history to see what has happened while she was on holiday. Normally, the people would go on her computer to print some files or recover some files. They would not be browsing the internet from there. So it looked like everything was cleaned up. So you see here from July, end of July to the beginning of how do you call it? Of October, everything was cleaned up. And the browsing history here would show that which files were accessed. There was nothing. And there were many files accessed throughout that missing period. So first of all, when you're looking for evidence, you should consider that the absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. Just because there is no evidence for something there doesn't mean that hasn't happened. Then I started looking at the detailed browsing history and the internet history, and I found out that on that day in particular that the file was opened, that an attachment was downloaded. And that was a zip file, a compressed file. And I looked here and I found out that it was the same time, and you look at that, it was September the 15th. It was September the 15th that this download, so that file was downloaded from Yahoo. We know that Yahoo was accessed, and we know the name of the account that was accessed. And the name of the account was one of the employees. I redacted that obviously over here. So this is a record of everything that happened. The employee went on Yahoo, downloaded a document, a zip file. We don't know at this stage what that zip file was. But then it turns out that the Microsoft Word was opened and created that was a CV with the name of that employee. Okay, so she opened that CV of hers and she printed copies because she was looking for another job. But the crime was not that she was printing her CV, it was that at the same time that she was there, and I can prove it by the access of her Yahoo account, the same that it was there, it was the same time that the other private documents were opened and accessed. So we can put her on in front of the computer when this happened. So I look at the printer spool and I found the same document there. The printer spool is a temporary place where the printer is sending all the stuff, and then it keeps them until each of the files are printed. And then the CV was deleted and it was not recoverable at the time. But I didn't need to recover it. I wasn't really interested in the content of the CV. I know that that file was downloaded from her account, so it puts her there. And the creation date that was and the access day of the CV were all, like a minute apart or something. So all that helped me to see that it was her. So I created a report. I also showed there's evidence that the external drive was attached at the same time, which led me to believe that she copied some of those files. And although all those pieces of evidence were circumstantial, each piece by itself was not absolutely damning for that employee. If you put them on a timeline, they all make sense and they paint the bigger picture. So I did that. I put them on a timeline. They had an internal hearing, and when the employee was faced with a timeline, she just got up, took her coat, and left the building and never returned. Okay. So that information, digital evidence, is not only about recovering, it is about interpreting it. How do you create a proper interpretation of what you've got? And how do you interpret things that are not absolute? There are just bits and pieces. So creating a context through a timeline, for example, is one of those things. I've got a couple of more. I've got more questions. One. And that's from Mihailo. As you know, many people use VPN services for private purposes, including scientific purposes. In many countries, VPN is prohibited by law, and many countries restrict access to the resources. But VPN can also be used for illegal purposes, terrorism, viewing pornography, financial fraud. What's your personal attitude towards the possibilities of using VPN services in democratic societies? What do you think is the optimal balance in prohibiting and allowing the use of VPN services? That, hello, is a very, very good question. It's in democratic societies, you must balance the things between freedoms and the rule of law and more important things than individual freedom. So national security is more important than individual freedom. That's my take on it. The security of Scotland or the security of Ukraine is more important than any private message that me and Alexander are sending to each other. If it's the state will not go into, we should not normally go and look in private messages and private communication for no serious reason. But if the reason is national security or things like the public health, where other people will die, I think that overrides it. in terms of freedom and if the use for crime, the thing about VPNs is that you cannot really control them. You cannot have a prison sentence for people using VPN. Let's say you do. Scotland has 5 million people. Okay, if 1 million people use a VPN, 1 million people must go to prison. You must put 20% of the population of Scotland in prison for using a VPN. You cannot do that. Then there's going to be the people that you didn't catch, and out of resentment for the government, they're going to start using VPN as well. So then you're going to have to put 2 million people out of the 5 million people in prison. That's not going to work. The thing about VPN is that it's going to be used for illegal purposes. What is illegal in one country is not necessarily legal in another. I was looking at some online resources, and I was looking at countries where some things are a crime and things are not. And it turns out that there are countries in the world where watching child pornography is not a crime. Not because anybody says it's a good thing, it's because nobody actually passed a law to make it illegal. What you do in one country is illegal in another. You cannot do in Iran or Saudi Arabia the things that you do in Europe. Certainly there's countries like China or North Korea that there's even less things that you can do. But you have no expectation of privacy when you're on your phone. So people want to protect themselves from regimes like that, they will need to use a VPN. The thing about VPN providers is that they do not keep records. That's the whole point of having VPNs, that you don't keep records. So you come there, the police comes there, knocks on the door, so we have a warrant, okay, take whatever you want. Whatever you get is not going to help you because there's no records. That's what VPN is. VPN companies are selling. Privacy. So you cannot, you either have privacy or you don't have at all. So we have to take into account. However, are there things that you can do when you investigate? Yes, you can. For example, I'm using NordVPN on my computer, and I've got my account. I go into my account. Usually I choose a UK IP address because otherwise it may block me access to things and BBC and news and stuff like that. But if I want to have a Ukrainian VPN, I can get a Ukrainian VPN. Nobody can read what I'm doing through the VPN channel. And when they see a traffic, they cannot see that it is me. But if you get my laptop and you look at the settings of my VPN and you see that it is XYZ IP address to Ukraine, then you know what was the IP address I was using when I was doing something online. And if on the other side, the access was from XYZ IP address, then you know it was from that VPN company. You cannot necessarily at that point make the individual person, but you can start putting the pieces together. When I'm sending something out, it goes through a VPN, but my provider will be able to tell how much data I send. So if I send 20 gigabytes at 11:05:06, I started sending from that IP address, and if at 11:05:06 UK time there is a record on another computer somewhere else that they were receiving from that IP address, the same amount of data, then you can put those pieces together. So there are ways around, complicated ways that will actually require international collaboration. And that is the other issue, the issue of laws of every country and the issues of laws in other countries. VPN, and if you are someone who understands how IT works or how digital evidence works, you can get away with God knows how many years of crimes. I can tell you from personal experience, you can. And if you know if someone is bullying you, for example, you can bully them back and they will stop bullying you because you can really scare them. And it will never get back to you. That's another story. So let me see if there's another question. That one. Michaelo, you're welcome, Michaelo. Yes, I will send a copy of my presentation. You also, I think you're recording it, so I think it'll be available from there, but I'll send the slides for sure. So the next one is again an employee issue, which was in a leisure facility, hospitality business. So a client walked into the accounting room just to settle something with his account, and someone in the accounting room was watching porn on their desktop, not laptop, not outside, you know, a salesman in a hotel room 100 miles away. It was on a desktop. So they reported that, and then the employer got that computer, they gave me the drive, and I started investigating. And then the brief changed, because what happened there was a second investigation, because that employee was supposed to be the sponsor of his manager. The manager was American, so his name was as a sponsor, his work permit, and he was supposed to have received an email from the Home Office, the Department of Interior for the UK, to update his work permit. Apparently his work permit expired. Home Office came over knocking on their door, and he said, oh, I never received anything. So I looked at the computer to see if he had actually received it. The thing is that the police can get a warrant to go inside his email accounts. I cannot go inside his email account. If I do that, it's called hacking, and that's 5 years in prison. However, I can investigate the computer that belongs to his employer and see if there is evidence there. So these are screenshots from one of my tools. In this one, I investigated a computer drive for keywords. One of the keywords was UK Border Agency. The Home Office agency that was responsible for the work permits is called the UK Border Agency. So that text would be anywhere on the emails. So if you look here, you will see that I found many hits. The hits were in a place called free space. And free space is empty space on your computer. And if you have found things there, it means that they were deleted. So those things were stored there and they were deleted, and that's why they are there. You can recover them, but that space is marked available for something else to be written on. So if you look at here, this is the links, homeoffice.gov, UK Border Agency. These are parts, this is a link that shows a specific address. Then I look at the allegation of porn. I recover some pictures and some videos of pornography, but I didn't know how many there were. So I looked for specific websites, and I found more than 54,000 records. And that was on the desktop in the office. And then this is from the, how do you call it, from the page file system. This is a special file on Windows that's like a temporary memory to speed up your usage. And as you can see here, this is a text. sponsor license expiry, file and reminder. This is a text from those emails. Again, those links from the Home Office, the search hits, I looked for homeoffice.gov.uk, the Home Office government website. And as you can see, for every I click on every of the results and I get the content. So in total, I found 223 hits from the keywords about the Home Office. And I followed one of those addresses that were in the deleted messages, and the addresses were taking me here. That's the official Home Office website. That's the login detail for sponsoring people who are on work visas. So that was the legitimate website. That link was in the remains of emails. And for those emails to be on the computer drive, he must have opened them on his browser. So he had, if they were saved, he had seen the messages. That was the evidence that he had seen the messages. And then it was the rest of his activities. So I used some statistics I found online about how long does a person stays on every visit on a page on Facebook or on YouTube, on a porn website, on a porn video or a YouTube video. And I made some calculations. And because that guy was there for 4 years, and because a lot of the history was partially deleted, but it was still could be found, with the keywords, I calculated if that evidence was spread over 6 months or 1 year or 2 years or up to 4 years. So in the best case scenario, that was over 4 years, that means he would spend 1 hour in social media and half an hour a day on porn websites. If that was over 6 months, that would be around 4 hours a day watching porn and all day having his social media on and doing nothing else. So I used the average, the mean values, and the mean values would show that he would spend on social media around 2 hours a day and about an hour a day on porn websites. Social media would also include YouTube and stuff like that. So that would mean that with YouTube, many people would put, you can put like background music while you're working. So that in itself is not indicative. So I explained those things on my report so people do not misunderstand. But there was no justification for any of those things, even 1 minute of watching porn on a desktop. So the total time estimate is that it will be anything from 3 hours a day to 14 hours a week. That's 2 days a week he was spending on social media and porn websites. So obviously that case was lost for that guy. I think the next one is the next. Yes, I think that's the last one. We got a question. Let me address that. I think it's Alexander. I have one more question about the possibility of using browser data. This applies, for example, to determining the location. The development of technology allows a person to move, to be mobile in choosing a place to stay. These locations can be set. Thus, this person may from such an alibi, well, you see, I was not in this place at the crime scene. How admissible is that evidence in this case? The evidence that we are looking at is the evidence that the machine is telling us, not what the user is telling us. So if I have my Twitter and I say that I am in Edinburgh and I go to London and I leave my Twitter settings in Edinburgh and my tweets say Edinburgh, if I have chosen to do that, that's my right. But all my other records will prove that I'm in London. Even if I take a picture and put on Twitter, the metadata on the picture will show that I'm in London. The average user can change the time settings to confuse things, but it's not easy for the average user to change the location on the metadata of a photo or a video or something like that. So when we're looking at every kind of evidence, obviously, but as I said, the evidence has to be corroborated. You cannot just say, "Oh, I put my settings on, on Facebook that I am in Edinburgh." That doesn't mean something. You take that into account to see whether that person is changing their location, or if they're using that location for fraud. So I can say, "Oh, I am in Kyiv," and I can be trying to deceive people and say, "Oh, I'm in Kyiv, I'm working with this charity, can you please send me money and help me?" The fact that I say that I'm Kyiv doesn't mean that I am. I'm probably not. Because then my message will say, "Oh, use this British IBAN of the charity and just put the money there." So the locations can be manipulated easily. They can be set up easily in social media and devices, but the real location will not be manipulated easily like that. I mean, you're getting your GPS location from satellites. The only way to change that is to have a stronger signal to mimic the satellite signal and provide you with a different location. That can be done. So you can do that and have an airplane lose its position and start going somewhere else. Or have a boat or a car. But you need a very strong signal and you need technology, you need satellite GPS technology to do that. The average person cannot do that. So I don't know if that answers the question. So an alibi is not always just because you said you were in Edinburgh. Interesting thing, there are other things that can become alibis electronically. I had this, I don't have it in this presentation, but I can send to you if you're interested. There was from one electrical company with electric devices, there was a competition, I think, for modern ideas for coffee machines. So there was a coffee machine that, like an espresso, that on the top had a palm reader. So you would go there, set up how you like your coffee, scan your palm reader, it keeps your palm reader, and every time I go there, it automatically makes the coffee the way I want it. Okay. That coffee machine can provide a better alibi. Because if that coffee machine is in a place that other people see it, or believe they see it, because I may have changed it, and if there is a record that at 3 o'clock I physically put my palm on the palm reader and it made me a coffee, okay, and if I had it somewhere else doing that while I was committing the crime, and then I had the replacement coffee machine in the office, and when nobody would see me, I would change the two coffee machines. If they came back to me, I would say, no, I was in the office. I was working late in the office. Ask the coffee machine. And the coffee machine would say, Basil physically touched me with his palm. And then the police will have to find a way to prove that either I was not there or that the machine was with me somewhere else while I was committing the crime. And either they need to have a lot of other evidence to prove that I'm lying, or they need to prove that the coffee machine was with me. Interesting? And it's going to get more complicated. So this one was an interesting one. the mother, there was a dispute. The mother wanted to get the custody of the children. The father was Palestinian and the mother was Irish. So the guy's behavior had changed the last few months. He was very irate, and he was always on some Arabic websites. And obviously the mother was thinking that he was being visiting extremist websites, that he was radicalized. She was scared. So I got the family computer, I imaged it, gave it back, and then I worked on from the clone to see what was happening. That was the actual disk drive. I look at the browsing history. I found a lot of Arabic websites that obviously he was visiting. And it turns out it was a bit exciting because if I found something that was extremist, then I would have to either inform the police or the security services, MI5. So I thought, that's good. That's going to be a Bond, like a Bond movie. It turns out it wasn't as exciting. The websites were all Arabic, but they were all pirate websites where you can download pirate software and pirate movies and pirate music. So same thing as so many other millions of people were doing online, just in Arabic websites instead of a English speaking one. But when I had a general look at the drive, I realized that a lot of space was missing. I could not account for from the things that I could see. So I started looking for hidden folders. And I found out that there was a huge folder. It had 250,000 screenshots, like more than 250,000 screenshots. And it was because the husband had installed a keylogger. For those who don't know, a keylogger is a piece of software that is hidden and is taking screenshots every 30 seconds or however you set it. And it records your keystroke, so you can record people's passwords and login details. And you can take screenshots of everything that is on the screen. So I started going through that because there was a huge amount of evidence there. And in this case, I have to tell you, apart from making a copy of the device, I did not use any forensic tool. At school, we're learning to use tools for everything we did. However, in this one, I did not use to do anything like that. I needed no forensic tools because the screenshots from the keylogger were there. And because the keylogger was installed by the husband, to spy on his wife, then I could use it against him. Because it was him who did that. And I know that it was him. Why? Because the keylogger was taking screenshots of everybody's activity. It was not discriminating. So some of the screenshots was him actually buying the license for the keylogger. It was him going into his wife's email account and her phone account, copying text messages, downloading files from her emails, reading her private messages, copying her messages. And how do I know that? The wife was a nurse. She was working for the National Health Service. So her shifts, when she was at work and when she was not, are a matter of record. So if there was activity 8 o'clock in the morning, and the wife was from 6 o'clock in the morning, she was in the hospital on the other side of the city, it wasn't her who was using the computer, it was the husband. So the husband, every day, he would wake up in the morning, watch porn for between 7 and 7:30 in the morning, and then he would look at his wife's emails, and then he would go to work. That was his routine. How do I know that? As I said, from the screenshots of the keylogger he installed himself. This is him saving a picture from a private email of his wife. This is a tool that I found that he was using to actually read his wife's passwords. That's the Internet Explorer pass view, and it had Bebo, it was popular at the time, and Facebook accounts, and he could look at that. And then there was emails, and he would copy paste the content of the email, and he would see it was the second that he would press copy to copy her email, the text of her email. And at the end, he would go on the browser, delete the browsing history, and pretend that nothing happened. That was the secret folder that I found. And this is some of the movies he was downloading. And some of the software, the illegal software he was downloading. And this one was the actual email where he bought with his credit card the keylogger that he installed. So there was no question about who installed that. It wasn't someone who hacked it. It wasn't anybody else. That was the husband. That's the keylogger. And this is what the keylogger menu looks like. So you can set up with all your settings and then click hide, and it's all hidden from the user. And at the end, you know, he had broken so many laws. The good thing is that the judge, when he saw that, when he read my report in, I don't know, 10 minutes or something, he gave custody of the children to the mother and he closed the case. I was told that by the lawyer because children courts in Scotland are closed door. So you must have a reason to be in the court. It's not open to the public. So that's it. These are the cases. Now, the thing about all those cases, I try to make a collection of different things and different applications of digital forensic and different kinds of digital evidence. The reason I made this specific selection is because I want to show you that digital evidence takes many forms. It can be found in many different places. Sometimes you don't even need to see the evidence because a police report can be so bad that you can have a case dropped. Sometimes you realize that what the prosecutors think that is evidence is not. And that is why making your case with what you have is all you need to do. Sometimes you need to find new evidence, obviously. And when sometimes you find evidence, you need to put it into context. Remember the one earlier on with the Home Office and the UK border border service. I had to go through every email there. With the porn websites, I knew what they were. You know, you check one of the URLs. If you have another 100 URLs on that website, you know that it's porn. You know, it wasn't important to see what the person was. It was the fact that he was spending time at work on the work computer going there. But the emails were more specific. I had to go through every hit because some of those hits could have been because the user went on the website to look for something else. So I had to go through every single one of them and put them into context. And once I had the context, then I could write a report and say, that is the context. If you look at your computers, your laptops, okay, if your laptops have Windows and they are English, in English original, if you look at kiddie porn or child porn or words like that, you'll find more than 100 in your computer. The thing is that if you get a brand new computer that's never connected to the internet, you're still, and you just open it, in half an hour, you're still going to find it. Because those words are dictionary words. They're going to be there every time you call the dictionary. So when you find that word and you go on a record, let me show you. Okay. So if you're looking at the keyword, if that was, instead of finding a remark that was kiddie porn, you will have to see, you have to click and see what was next to that. And if it was a dictionary word, it will be the next available word that started with kiddie or child or whatever. And when you see that the records before and after was that thing, then you knew that that is not actually something illegal, that that word is there because of the how do you call it? Because of the dictionary, and the dictionary word by the use of dictionary is not a crime. So, oops, sorry, I went out. Let me just put. So that's it. So I've got these barcodes here. If you want to scan them, I'll send a copy of my presentation anywhere. And you can find on the last one, Law Society of Scotland. You can see my profile there. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. You can see my profile at Edinburgh University, and of course you can follow me on Twitter if you're using Twitter, and you can use all those things to stay connected. And by all means, if you have any questions or if you want to discuss anything like that, either out of curiosity or it's something that troubles you, just feel free to do so. There's a last. Alexander says, moreover, there's equipment in Ukraine that restores information even from wiped and physical damage hard drives. Yes, there are tools, and interestingly, in many countries, depend on the level of hackers you have. You may find customized and custom-made tools that are sometimes better than the commercial or the widely available ones. Ukraine has this software capacity and software creating capacity, and yes, it will be interesting to see whenever actually I can get in touch with some of those people to see some of those tools. But for lawyers, one of the things I want to say is that you should not use any of those tools. You should not touch those tools at all. Because if you touch any of those tools and you connect a device, it's more likely that you're going to destroy some evidence. Or if someone like me comes along and find out that you did that, I will go to the court. When I go to the court, I will say, oh, Alexander was playing around with that, so I cannot really be sure what he added or what he deleted. Speaking of which, I had a case in Scotland where a lady went to the police station and saw some text messages from her ex-partner, and she said, oh, I'm afraid he might hurt his son. So the police officer, just a constable, no expert, the reception said, oh, this is our email, take some screenshots, email the screenshots of the text. She emailed the screenshot, somebody put them on a report, they took them to the prosecutor went to the judge ordered a warrant to seize his mobile phone. They got his mobile phone, and the detective put him on an evidence bag, and they kept at the police station. Then they charged the guy without sending the mobile phone to cybercrime. And when his lawyers hired me, I said, oh, I would like to have a look at that and recover the messages myself. So okay, we are going to meet at the prosecutor's office. They're going to have a room for us. The prosecutor will be there, I'll be there, the detective will bring the mobile phone. Everybody was there, we had coffee, nice chat. It took me like an hour to work. And it was, it was nice and professional and friendly, to be honest. So I opened my laptop, connected the mobile phone with my cable, and for 1 hour I was working on it, and the prosecutor and the police were on the back of my laptop. They did not see what I was doing. And they have no idea until today what if I did something wrong or I didn't. I didn't, obviously, there was no need to do anything. I just need to recover the texts that were already there. They were not even deleted. I recovered them in a professional way that could be reported, so nobody would argue about that. The problem was that the police did not send it to the cybercrime lab. So I got my hands on the mobile phone and the cybercrime unit had not. So there is no record of what was there before. Because if there was a record of what was there before and then I worked on it and then something was missing, okay, then it was crystal clear, Basil did something wrong. Right now, it will be nothing. Because they didn't know. The police detective did not send it to the cybercrime unit. Why? I don't know. The bottom line is that they allow me to look at evidence without them securing it. So yeah, some questions. That's from Vesta. A great lecture. Thank you very much. Please tell whether you have used in your practice satellite images as an evidence. It's easy to know how often it's used for encounters, taking into account new technical opportunities. Thank you. That is very interesting. I've only been involved in satellite imagery once for a case, but I've worked, trained myself on satellite images, and I'm planning to follow some courses on open source intelligence. I'm using actual satellite imagery in open source intelligence training. And the reason for that is because you can identify a lot of things even from old pictures, satellite pictures like Google. Okay. Since I've got you here, a second. I'll actually show you something. I think we've got a few minutes. Just bear with me. Upskilling and lecture material sent. This is it. Good. Let me show you. Can you see my slides? Good. So this is about the Moria refugee camp in the island of Lesbos in Greece. It was famous, it became famous because it had too many people, thousands of people landing on Lesbos a few years ago in the summer, every day. And there was a big fire there and the camp was destroyed. So I used Google and Bing maps on my training. And look at this one. This is on Google Maps. So either the central government or the army in Greece, they actually ask Google to blur that. And you can do that. You can ask Google or Bing or any other provider like that to blur, even privately, not only as a government. You can say on the street view, I don't want my windows to be seen by other people, just blur them. So as you can see here, it is completely blurred. But if you go on Bing Maps instead of Google Maps, it is there. It wasn't blurred. Probably they forgot, they didn't think to ask them to, or they thought that if you ask Google, everybody else will blur it. No, you need to ask its provider. And I know this place because I was actually, did my part of my military service in Lesbos. This is a military camp. The thing is that this military camp was created for 200 men. And I emphasize on men because it was just men serving at the time, and it was for 200 maximum. This area was expanded all around here with tents and containers, and had around 20,000 refugees, including children, old people, sick people, women, everything. So it was literally unfit. There was no other option, obviously, on the island, but it was a very bad situation. And this, if you go to the street view, you can see the entrance of the camp. So yes, satellite imagery and even things like street views, things like that are there. And the thing is that imagery you can find online, not everything is controlled by Google or by governments. Many of them will be posted by private individuals. And they're still going to be there. It's about knowing where to find them. Interestingly, so this is me. I'm very famous. I'm on Google. And I lived here. That was many, many years ago. Okay. Wow, almost 20 years ago. So I lived there. I know why I was here. I was waiting for someone, and the Google car just passed. And I was doing this course about how you can find me. And if you put my name and the word cat and you go to Google Images, you will find some things that are relevant, including this one. This one in the bottom is from another cybersecurity presentation, and it's a website that I call I know where your cat, no, that's how it's called, not I call it, I know where your cat lives.com. And you are looking to people's picture that have satellite GPS information, and you can look at that and you can find out the inside of their homes. But this one was from YouTube, the one on the left. That was my former cat, Boo Boo, God rest her soul. And if you went there, you found her name. So you could now start Googling Boo Boo and Basil together, better combination to filter out the results. And this is another place that I used to live. And Boo Boo was more famous than me on Google because he had 2 or 3 instances recorded. So this was the living room, and we had a dining table over here in this bay. And she would spend hours watching people going by. So if you knew that I lived in that area, and that street called Armadale Street in Glasgow, but you were not sure which number, which flat, you would go there, and if you see Boo Boo, then you know if Boo Boo is there, that's where Vasilis is. And pictures like that, just by this picture, you can tell so many things. This is, for example, what kind of a ship it is. Is it loaded or not? Where is it right now? Where did it come from? Where is it going to? All that information, as long as you find the name and the owner, you find where was it built? Is it still sailing or is it scrapped? What was it carrying? Where was it carrying to? Who else? Who needs to know information about a ship like that? Come on, answers on the chat quickly. Police, good. Who else? Well, customs need the information, port authorities, the Navy, all those things. But pirates also need that. If you are in Somalia and you have ships coming back and forth in front of you, you are drinking your cocktails, and you need to decide which ship you're going to raid. Here's the problem. You look at the ship and it looks nice, and you click on that and it says armed guard on board. So it means they've got people with guns there. So you're not going to go try and get on that one. You're going to try and get on the next one. That's digital evidence, but the kind of digital evidence you can get online. So, yeah, stop sharing that. Terrorists, a very good answer, very close to the pirates indeed. And there are cases when crimes fell into the frame when the Google car was moving, photographing the area. That is true. Actually, an interesting question, is there admissibility on such evidence in the investigation of a crime? Yes, it is. If something's been filmed by a third party, as long as the third party can verify that I took that picture or that video, that date and time, yes, it is. It's up to the local court, but normally, as scientifically, the evidence, if you can verify who took the picture or the video, and you have the original, then it is admissible. And it has happened actually in Paris, when first time Google car went around, someone ran and grabbed a woman's bag, purse, and he ran away. And the lady found out that a long time later, she found out that what the street view was, and she was looking up. This is where I was mugged, and then she saw, 50 meters down the road, someone running with her bag, and his picture was there. Took it to the police caught him. So yes, any kind of evidence is like that. Any more questions? Anything? How to distinguish digital originals or digital evidence from copies? Sometimes you cannot. And you cannot because in forensics ourselves, we create copies that are exactly bit by bit so that we can investigate the copy, the clone, and not the original, so we don't damage it. If we damage the clone, we just make another clone. But it is... how do you call it? It is sometimes difficult to do that. However, the best way to be sure that something is original if you extract it yourself. Okay, so if someone says, "Oh, this is a picture I got from my mobile phone," and I give you on a USB stick. Okay, I look at the picture, I look at the data, but I don't really know if it was from your phone or somebody else's phone. And remember, I told you, you cannot manipulate easily the GPS information on a phone live. However, if you take the picture out, then you can edit the GPS and you can manipulate it there. But remember also that a manipulated GPS can sometimes be confirmed that's manipulated because of the picture. Okay, if the GPS, you are in London and they say you are in the middle of Leicester Square and you have a selfie in front of the London Bridge, one of those two things are false. And it's most likely that the London Bridge is real and your GPS data are false. You're welcome. Thanks for your thanks. So yes, data can be manipulated. To manipulate it live is very difficult. I mean, state-sponsored actors and secret services, and can the NSA or people like that do that? Probably they can. Can most of us do? No, but for people who are into cybersecurity, and especially like me in digital forensics, if you get a picture, you can edit the metadata, the information inside about the information inside the file, and you can even change the last time it was accessed. So I can change things now and change the last access time that to become last year, or to be the same moment the picture was taken. And if it's the same moment that the picture was taken, then that means that if you take those things face value, it will mean that it was never manipulated, was never edited or accessed before. And sometimes some strange things will happen. That's why I told you that you should not touch digital evidence. You should always ask an expert. You can have a picture that it says it was created today. It was created, 8 o'clock this morning, but it was accessed last Christmas. And I can tell you that these are all real. It's not, nothing has been manipulated, nothing edited. How can I have a picture that was created today and was last accessed last Christmas and both of them be true? Yes.
Шановний пане Олександре, хочу попросити вас, щоб ви переклали професору, чи зараз використовують криптовалюту для здійснення різних операцій, які знаходяться по законам, в кримінальних цілях. Чи є досвід ось роботи з таким видом активів і чи є можливість розслідувати такі операції?
Добре. Basil, now many criminal guys use cryptocurrencies in criminal cases. Did you have experience to investigate it?
I have had some training, and I had been involved in a couple of cases that other people were investigating. There are tools being developed constantly to be able to analyze cryptocurrencies, but one of the things is that if the person who initially started that crypto wallet used absolutely fake details because they never planned to get the money out, they were just going to use it and use the money from crime to do other.
Can I translate particularly?
Yes.
Так, в мене такий досвід, в мене є курс цього. Перша, найважливіша частина дослідження того, яким чином зроблена або там сфальсифікована такий віртуальний актив.
So, with the case of WannaCry, the very famous ransomware that hit also the NHS in the UK, many people paid the ransom, but because the criminals did not expect that all the media and all police and around the world would be following the wallet, everybody was watching the wallet. So the money is still there. Nobody ever took them out because if you try to take them out, somebody's going to grab you.
В Сполученому Королівстві був відомий такий кейс, тому що багато людей платять на гаманці, але це не те, що там вкрасти звичайний гаманець. В кожного є гаманець, але хто за ним стоїть, то невідомо.
So, if you plan to create the crime and then take the money out, then
якщо ви плануєте злочин і отримати чиїсь гроші, списати їх.
If you take out the money on a bank account or a debit card, it has to be on a fake name, otherwise the police will get you.
Якщо ви гроші спишете на банківський або картковий рахунок, використовуючи там підроблене ім'я, то поліція вас спіймає.
The other way is you can actually go now to Bitcoin ATM, a cash machine, and get money from there, or you can buy something that is untraceable. So I can buy, let's say, gold online. I deliver it some address, not my home, and I get the gold and I go away, and nobody knows who I am.
Або можете використати кеш-машину, біткоін кеш-машин, банкомат біткоїна, або використати доставку через онлайн обмінники, використовуючи іншу свою адресу, то ніхто вас не знайде.
So yes, now it's easier to find out who it was because you can eventually follow the trail of money on Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. But it's still a problem, and it will be a problem. And there is also cryptocurrencies fraud that people pay money without buying cryptocurrency. So you can send the money somewhere else, and people will disappear with the money, and it will be crypto-related fraud, but there will be no crypto involved.
Кожна крипта можна відслідкувати її шлях, але все ж таки це лишається проблемою для дослідження, тому що заволодіти просто грошима, заволодити криптоактивами, є досить велика різниця. Я приблизно до тексту перевожу.
For example, there are a lot of cryptocurrency frauds, okay, and where people are selling online methodologies and packages that you will invest and have a secret method how to become a millionaire in buying Bitcoin, and nothing like that is actually real. They're all fraud, and you will always get people who will become who are greedy. They want to make money, but they will finally just be so desperate that they will actually follow that.
Багато випадків фроду, коли викрадення коштів саме через криптовалюти, використовуються так звані лектори, які розповідають, як стати мільйонером, але насправді це повна брехня, і люди просто позбавляються своїх коштів.
А лектори стають мільйонерами.
Somebody still became a millionaire, but not the people who send money.
Oh yes, the criminals will always. Let me just show you something very quickly. So, from another presentation on cybersecurity and cyber fraud, what is wrong with the domain name here? Anyone? Anything wrong with BritishAirways.com? If you look, one of the eyes doesn't have a dot.
Якщо ви побачите, то всі імена мають крапку.
It's because it's not in English, it's in Turkish. Turkish alphabet has two eyes, one with a dot, one without a dot, a silent one. You can see it here. But because the one doesn't have a dot and the other has a dot, it will, if you pay attention, you will notice it. But mine was actually better. How about this one? It doesn't have any dots at all. That's my British Airways.
Це створення сайту дубляжу без крапки, і це Безіл собі створив British Airways, авіаційну компанію Безіла, з дублюючим іменем.
So I bought all those domain names for myself.
Тому що він використовує літеру I без крапки, тому що в турецькому алфавіті, як в українській є і «ї» з двома крапками, а в турецькому є взагалі без крапки. І він використовує це для створення сайтів близнюків. Twins sites.
So I bought these. It was they were quite cheap, and then I wanted to buy Netflix.com, but this Netflix was actually without the I was already taken. So I clicked on that, and it took me to this website. It was a news website, and on the side there is advertisement, and this looks a very familiar advertisement to me. And I clicked on that one, and it's a fake one, a fake website about Gordon Ramsay investing in making millions from home using Bitcoin. And they used pictures of him in another TV shows to make this whole thing real. And This one actually has a counter telling you how much money people are making. And the domain name on the top is bbcfinance.newsglobal1.com. So people read domains from the left.
And don't read another part. Мгм. Да.
And all these are the same.
Безіл знайшов сайт підробку відомого шоумена Гордона Рамзі, ось який повністю дублює новини, в тому числі з BBC Finance, і розповідає про те, як Гордон Рамзі не на телевізорі і не в ресторанному бізнесі заробив собі мільйони на фінансах, на якихось фінансах.
So I look at the domain names and they were all registered at the same time. And all those things, they will take you to this website, which is a bit trader. So there's a lot about fake systems to make money on, how do you call it, on Bitcoin. And the official Bitcoin website tells you that all of these are scam. There is nothing true about all the systems. Everything is fake.
І повністю продубльований офіційний сайт біткоїна, але при цьому він є повністю фейковим.
So, sorry, I got into so many other things, but it was interesting questions.
Так, вибачте, я так багато розповів, але це дуже цікаве питання, справді.
Super, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. So, any more questions? Anyone wants to discuss anything?
Ну, запитань більше немає. Я хотів би подякувати шановному професору Вазіліусу Манусасу за таку цікаву лекцію. Бачили, багато питань було поставлено. І ця сфера цифрова, ми бачимо, дуже стрімко розвивається. І я думаю, що і професору, і нам ще багато в цьому контексті треба буде зробити.
Thank you, Basil. We have a brilliant lecture and have many questions, and now digital sphere growing up faster, and that's why we have many work together, we and use this sphere.
Well, I'll be happy to come back and discuss more things like that, and maybe more longer courses with more details about digital evidence and how to prepare a report that is good for where the technical people, the forensics people do their work, how they communicate with the lawyers.
Я дуже вдячний, буду і з радістю презентував би вам більш детальний курс і для технічних працівників, і для юристів, які займаються форенсиком, і для практикуючих юристів.
Дякую. У нас є декілька аспірантів, які займаються дослідженнями в сфері і електронної комерції, і діджиталізації, і криптовалюти. І нам буде дуже цікаве спілкування і особисте з вами, і наших аспірантів. І будемо запрошувати вас ще за можливості.
Thank you. We have some PhD students and which work in field of digital and cryptocurrencies and digital commerce. That's why we have a pleasure speaking with you, contact with you, and we will be happy to working with you in next lecture and next project. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Basil, you are online. Щось, мабуть, сигнал зник.
Ага, щось, да. Щось.
Може, в них
Мгм,
теж
зависло.
світло. Теж світло виключають. Your turn. Oh.
I was cut off for a second. I don't know why.
No.
So I'm putting it my email.
Мгм. Я зазначу зараз свій email. Мгм. Oh, I see.
If you're using WhatsApp, that's the number I'm using, and
Ось мій email і ось мій номер на WhatsApp. Ви можете зі мною контактувати.
Ну, дуже дякуємо. І будемо раді спілкуватись і разом рухати цифровий світ далі. Україна є одним з лідерів розвитку цифровізації, і спілкування наше і взаємодія, я думаю, дуже можуть бути плідними. Дякую вам ще раз.
Thank you so much. Ukraine one of the leader in digital sphere. That's why will work together. Thank you so much again.
thank you. It's a pleasure to meet you all today, and thanks, Alexander, for the connection and making this day possible. As I said, I'll be happy to work with all of you in any capacity. Just contact me. I put my profile on the Law Society of Scotland, so you can see some of the events there. I think there's no restrictions for the videos from the Law Society. There are some, you can see in my profile some webinars. So I think
Дякую дуже. І я ще посилання на сторінку юридичного товариства Шотландії, де є вебінари і також відеозаписи лекцій Безела. Law Society – це державний регулятор юридичної професії в Шотландії. Це офіційний ресурс, на якому Безел є експертом, і там розміщені його роботи і інформація про нього.
Дякуємо, з задоволенням звернемося до цього сайту. Ще раз дякуємо вам.
Thank you so much.
it was my pleasure, and hopefully I will see you all soon.
До речі, я хотів сказати, що в цьому році сесія Європейської організації публічного права, яка буде у вересні проходити в Греції, якраз присвячена питанням цифрових прав, діджиталізації, тобто повністю присвячена буде ось цій темі, в тому числі, якій ми присвятили сьогодні увагу.
In this year, in summer, will be International Public Law Organization session, and we will discuss about in Greece. It will be in Greece, and we will discuss about digital sphere, digital commerce, and topic which was today our gold term.
That's good.
Дякую ще раз і до скорих зустріч.